cosmic outlaw, the legend of Roan Hale. In a galaxy ruled by unbreakable codes and cold machines, one man discovered the most dangerous algorithm of all, defiance. Part 7. Whispers in the spire and shadows of the expanse, the twin moons of Verdant Prime hung low and luminous in the velvet night sky, their pale silver light spilling through the tall, arched transparisteel windows of Lady Mira Eldridge's chambers high in Lockhaven Spire, washing the room in a cool, ethereal glow that made the polished marble floors gleam like frozen rivers and turned every delicate ornament into a ghost of itself. The air carried the faint, lingering perfume of night-blooming vines that climbed the outer walls, sweet and heady, mingling with the sharper scent of polished wood from antique furniture passed down through generations, and beneath it all, the subtle metallic temps of the spire's ever-present ventilation systems humming softly like distant bees. Mira sat at a vanity, brush pausing mid-stroke through her long auburn hair that cascaded in silken waves down her back, catching moonbeams like threads of molten copper. Her reflection stared back eyes of vivid emerald green that held quiet fire. Skin pale from too many days confined within these gilded walls, lips pressed in a line of weary defiance. The land fees had been a noose, tightening slowly around her neck for months now, each lunar cycle bringing fresh notices projected in cold holographic blue across her private terminal, escalating penalties designed not to collect, but to ensnare. The Syndicate's extension clause was a masterpiece of predatory elegance, an additional surcharge so exorbitantly high that paying it merely reset the clock for another full cycle, interest compounding like vines choking an ancient tree, ensuring that eventually, inevitably, a single missed payment would forfeit everything. Her father's estate, the rolling acres of fertile valley land, the old family manor with its ivory-clad stone and hidden gardens would slip into Sheriff Kane's grasping hands. Another trophy for his expanding domain. She had watched the moons fade night after night from this very window, their light growing thinner in her heart as options dwindled, the weight pressing heavy on her chest like the humid air before a storm. But old Harlan, her father's faithful aide-stooped figure with silver hair and eyes, sharp as a hawk's, despite his years, had uncovered the clause buried in the fine print of the standard form, whispering it to her in the shadowed corridors, days ago with a conspiratorial gleam that reminded her of better times. It had cost her dearly, but not in ways that truly hurt. She had slipped out under cover of a departing merchant caravan, cloaked in plain fabrics that scratched coarsely against her skin compared to the silks she wore now. The night air cool and resented as she met the trader in a dimly lit alley behind the spire markets. A few pieces of family jewelry, trinkets from her childhood, pretty but meaningless baubles that held no stories worth keeping, and one ostentatious necklace Kane himself had gifted her last cycle. Heavy gold links studded with imported gems that had always felt cold and foreign against her throat. The merchant's lecherous gaze had lingered too long, his gestures oily and suggestive as he haggled, breath sour with cheap sin spirits. But it had worked. Credits transferred discreetly. Extension paid in full for another lunar cycle. Breathing room bought with baubles and a silent smirk at how his disgusting advances had played right into a quiet victory. Now, as Sheriff Kane's holographic image flickered to life in her chambers summoned by his insistent request, his broad face filled the projection, flushed with the smug anticipation of a predator closing on cornered prey. The transmission carried the faint background hum of his opulent office, the scent of his overpriced cologne almost imaginable through the ether, cloying and overpowering, like everything about him. Lady Mira, he purred, voice oily smooth, small eyes glinting with barely concealed triumph as beads of sweat traced paths down his jowls despite the cooled air. The cycle ends tonight. I've reviewed the records myself. Your estate reverts to Syndicate oversight at moonset unless, well, we both know the alternative we've discussed. His lips curled in a smile that didn't reach his eyes, breath coming heavier as he leaned closer to the projector, the implication hanging thick in the air like smoke. Mira met his gaze steadily, heart pounding a fierce rhythm beneath her ribs, but her voice emerged calm and laced with quiet amusement, a faint smirk curving her lips as she tilted her head just so, moonlight catching the emerald pendant at her throat, an old family piece she would never part with. Actually, Sheriff, the extension has been paid in full. Some unimportant trinkets sold to a departing merchant days ago. The clerk confirmed it, I'm sure. The change in him was instantaneous, a flicker of shock widening his eyes, then fury boiling up like a storm, face purpling deeper as veins throbbed at his temples, jowls quivering with barely contained rage, his breath hitched in a wheeze, fat fingers clenching unseen below the projection frame. Public decorum held him leashed. He could not explode here, not with her watching, not with the spire's logs recording every word, but the silence stretched taut, humming with his impotent wrath. Inwardly, Mira's smirk deepened, a warm satisfaction curling through her chest like the first sip of fine wine. Those lecherous gestures worked out rather well after all, she thought. The memory of the merchant's groping stares now a private triumph, a weapon turned back on the system that sought to cage her. Kane recovered with a forced chuckle that grated like gravel, eyes narrowing to slits. A temporary delay, then, "Enjoy your cycle, my lady." The hologram winked out abruptly, leaving only moonlight and silence. Far below in the administrative warrens, the clerk who had processed the pimento-nervous young man with trembling hands found himself reassigned by dawn to the Spire's sewage maintenance pits. The acrid stench of waste and chemicals clinging to his clothes like punishment made manifest the humid darkness a far cry from his former desk. Kane's distraction grew by the day, reports flooding his terminal of daring raids on Syndicate convoys. Deep in the expanse, supplies vanished without trace. Guards left bound and humiliated but alive. Quantum crystals and tax shipments redistributed to struggling frontier families. The outlaw Roan Hale and his band of merry men, whispers called them that now, with affectionate chuckles and taverns struck like ghosts, invisible to drones and scanners. Energy blasters and slug throwers were forbidden to civilians under pain of immediate orbital strike, their signatures lighting up surveillance nets like beacons. Even ancient gunpowder firearms were rarities, suppressed long ago, but boughs of yew like heartwood and blades of forged steel. Silent, deadly, undetectable. The forest swallowed their traces, leaving only laughter echoing in the leaves. In the noble circles of the spire, where air hummed with cool precision and scents of exotic spices wafted from banquet halls, Mira moved with practiced grace among allies who had known and respected her father, a stern but just man whose memory still commanded quiet loyalty. Lord Elias Thorne, silver-haired and sharp-witted with a voice like aged whiskey, clasped her hand warmly at a moonlit reception, the fabric of his velvet robes brushing soft against her skin as he leaned close. "Your father would be proud, child," he murmured, eyes twinkling with shared amusement as conversation turned to the latest losses plaguing Kane's allies. Beside him, Lady Seraphina Vosno, kin to the arrogant tournament. Lord Thank the Stars laughed softly behind a jeweled fan, her perfume light and floral, voice carrying conspiratorial delight. "Did you hear? Another convoy emptied clean." Kane's face at council yesterday purple as overripe fruit, sweat pouring like he'd run the expanse himself. They spoke in careful layers, amusement at the discomfort and angered egos of the powerful, never suspecting Mira's deeper connection, her heart quickening at each veiled reference to Roan's defiance. Deep in the Sherwood expanse, around a crackling campfire that sent sparks dancing upward into star-filled sky, resin smoke thick and comforting in the cool night air, Roan and his merry men shared a similar mirth. Tuck, broad and jolly with a laugh that rumbled like thunder, slapped his knee as he recounted the latest guard's wide-eyed surrender. "Left truss light festival birds, bows at our feet, alive and breathing to carry the tale. Told straight, we're playing nice today, lads. Keep cumin after the people, and next time the messages go silent, no bodies. Just empty patrols and questions Kane can't answer." Little John grinned, sharpening his blade with rhythmic scrapes that sang soft in the night, the steel glinting firelight. "That fat sheriff sitting in his spire, stuffing his face with imported meats while folks starve on his taxis. I'd love to see him try chasing us through these woods. He'd wheeze himself purple before the first mile." Roan leaned back against a moss-soft log, the earthy scent grounding him, a warm chuckle escaping as he stared into flames that danced warm across his scarred, handsome features. "Kane's a bully and borrowed armor thinks credits and drones make him untouchable. But out here," he gestured to the vast, whispering forests around them, leaves rustling like conspirators in the breeze. "The wild doesn't bow to algorithms, and neither do we." Laughter rose warm and defiant into the night, binding them closer, while far away in the spire, Mira gazed at the same moons, a secret smile touching her lips, the thread between outlaw and lady pulling ever tighter in the gathering dark. The game continued, intrigue weaving deeper, time bored but tensions rising like storm clouds on the horizon.